approach this on Tuesday. It sounds like, Matt, if you're okay with taking the lead and kind of like coalescing, like, here's the 15-minute, you know, whatever, what I heard from Karen and Rich in terms of what's on the table, what's the timeline there. Maybe gives us a little space to talk about, you know, not just the fact that a lot of these resources, we're not talking about things that need to be done this year, but really looking more at what's missing, whether it's the structural change, you know, some of these other types of connections that we want to start drawing together sooner rather than later, to make sure that these things happen around and before the resources flow. Seems like that's maybe the context that we need to set so that we know how we as a consortium need to respond and how we need to structure, you know, whether it's a subcommittee, whatever that is, to be able to facilitate that response.
And also to clarify my comments, that wasn't for Tuesday's meeting, but
no, I get it. But I mean, like, that's the kind of thing that we would need to identify. Do we need a working
exactly
and be the one to engage with them? And so I think that would be help. I think
there was a
flows.
Yeah, I think Aaron Bass made a suggestion last night about forming a committee work group around this.
Yeah, and I love that idea personally. I think we do, of course, need to talk about capacity, but we've also talked about the fact that we'll be revisiting as we conclude our recommendations in December, you know, this round of them. You know, are we going to have some work groups that now have concluded? Like we've talked about, educators obviously has been our longest running. Does that create capacity for us to do this or not? I think that's exactly what we need to be talking about on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So looks like we're expanding the recap to 15 minutes. Sounds like we're asking Matt to take the lead on that in one way or another. All right, awesome. And then that will leave us with, I guess it'll leave us with 30 minutes to discuss our role and next steps. That's tight.
Do we want to have like a couple questions for people to think about before they come to the meeting that we could kind of focus the conversation around it, or just get people's mind? I don't know exactly what they would be, but
right. Well, again, you know, and I feel like I'm always this person, I don't know if it's good or not, but I'm like, again, we want this to be sort of structural. This is like, how are we structuring ourselves to be able to respond? Not let's spend 30 minutes talking about what our response will be. You know, we're not going to talk about necessarily, from my view, the substance of what we expect we're going to be delivering on with recommendations and things like that. It's like, how do we put together the right format to get ourselves to those recommendations? So that's clear, because I think it's really easy to lose time when we really just want to dig in on, you know, the deficits that we see in the settlement. Right answer is to the settlement, you know, deficits, things like that. We could spend 6 hours talking about those things, but really we want to figure out how are we going to position ourselves as a consortium to have a set of people to enable us as a consortium to do that 6 hours of conversation and get there, is what that 30 minutes needs to be dedicated to,
right.
Not the actual substance of it. And I know that's difficult and annoying probably, but I always do that. But
it makes sense.
No, I think that makes sense.
That's what we were talking about doing.
yeah.
Is there an advocacy role? Is there a work group? Is there?
Right. The stakeholder engagement. I mean, I'm really proud to see how much we talked about that, because it's such a critical piece, you know, last night. And I think, again, it'll be a critical piece here, because there's going to be a lot of ideas out there flowing, you know, amongst my colleagues in Dover and things like that. And, you know, a lot of us feel we have the solutions in place, but I think for the consortium, a really great role as, like, you know, brokering a solution, hearing from stakeholders, advocates, experts, and balancing that. So I think we just need to figure out how do we orchestrate it, and that 30 minutes needs to be about how do we orchestrate it.
Okay, and that the understanding that the work group structure may evolve and change over time, but at this point in time, I think another bit of homework is for the work groups, the existing work groups, to really lift up those aspects of the settlement that are related to what they're already working on.
Right.
There's an element that calls out teacher recruitment, professional
Yep.
training and all that. So that we can see where the holes are. You may or may not structurally may not need another work group. It depends,
Right.
I think that there is going to be a hole, and how you feel it is another matter in terms of advancing advocacy.
Yeah.
But there, and in early learning, there's pieces in the social determinant, this direct alignment with the evolving work.
Right. So again, I mean, maybe the answer is each work group takes a piece. Maybe it is a whole new work group. I don't know yet, but that's
If
what.
we could do a map as homework, you can visually see where the gaps are.
So, you mean like have the team do that, sort of try to take an initial crack at the piece of the settlement and the priorities of the work groups?
I think we could.
That would be, I don't know, do we have?
If you have a simple visual.
Yeah. I mean, kind of like the list of just the high level stuff that we came up with last night versus, it's like one of those things you do in school. You have to connect the lines.
Exactly. It's like a writer's web.
Mm-hmm.
You could almost have, here are the main points, and then each work group, and are they addressing this? Yes or does this fit into this bucket? Yes or no, or how?
Right. But more of a picture, and less narrative.
Yeah. I think that sounds really helpful as a way for us to almost focus structurally, first of all, and just sort of to start the conversation. I really like that. Is that Haley, does that sound like something we could do? I mean, literally, I'm just thinking like 2 columns of the, what they're saying, what we're saying, and connecting the dots a little bit. Does it make sense, Haley?
Yeah, I can try. I mean, I'll just try and send a draft around and get feedback from everyone.
Yeah. Maybe put
From
it
this group.
paper and scan it. Like, we don't need to get too bogged down in graphic design. I think just the visual representation of it sounds really good.
Haley, I can help you.
And questions for, folks to consider coming in. We know we've opened it up to all the consortium, well, to everyone, obviously, but in particular, consortium members are invited to join this conversation and do homework in order to do that. What kind of questions do we think would drive 1 or 2 questions to be thinking about? I mean, is it related to that visual representation? Is it, how did the tenets of the settlement connect to the work of the work groups?
So what I wrote down while you guys were talking were just, I think your first question, Tizzy, was really good. How is Reading structured to respond to the settlement? So have people think about that. And then exactly what you just said, how does Reading's work align with the settlement, and where are there possible gaps?
And I think also, just to be complete, sorry, someone's doing yard work right outside my window. Maybe what are the limitations of our ability to respond? Because I know something that's come up a lot is sort of our scope, our Wilmington and Northern Newcastle County scope, and how that may butt up against the very statewide implications of the settlement. So I just think that's an important consideration and conversation to have. And maybe some people will think of the limitations in terms of, the stakeholders and that engagement, but I just think that would be a good question for folks to be thinking about.
I see Matt raised his hand. Did you mean?
I was just going to add, part of the challenge in doing all this will be that these opportunity funds, which are the bulk of the settlement, that, the districts, we don't know what those will be used for. They could be used for things that are priorities for the consortium, or they could be used for completely unrelated things. And, the applications come in on an annual basis. And I think you heard a little bit of this from Darrell Green last night, that, different districts use them different ways. And, the superintendents, I think, feel strongly that different districts have different needs. And so there's a little bit of tension between, the districts wanting to be able to direct those funds where they think they're needed, and the desire, at the state level to try to focus them in certain areas. So, there's that sort of places a limit on our ability to say whether, big parts of this settlement do or don't cover our priorities.
Yeah. Yeah, these are the key things that we have to kind of get out there and figure out how to navigate.
Right. Where can we and where can't we?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be limitations.
Mhm.
I mean, and
Or some of it is cultural.
yes. Well, and
what
some of those
I'm talking-
limitations might spark us to figure out what we might be advocating for as a consortium, because they're barriers that shouldn't be there.
So when I say cultural, there is a culture that permeates between districts and State Department of Education. And
Yes.
so even there is a perception that they may not be in alignment even before they even know whether they're in alignment or not.
And I thought Secretary Bunting made an interesting point last night. She said that the consortium could, I don't know how they would do this, but she said something to the effect of helping districts figure out how to spend the opportunity funds could be some sort of role. I don't know if that's realistic, but she did say something like that last night, which I thought was interesting.
I thought it was interesting. And then sort of the way Darrell's comment flowed from that, where he was really talking about coordination across districts, which has been such a, I think a point of contention, particularly through the pandemic. And we've talked about, I think from the beginning, how do we facilitate these solutions that really apply to all districts across them? Maybe those are two compatible ideas. I don't know. But again, these are things to me are like the beginnings of some of these bigger reform issues that will be really, I think we want to figure out how to surface all that stuff. And then, yeah.
So I think that there certainly is an opportunity, and I think we should try to, whenever we can, use asset a base language and not deficit language. So there's opportunity. Where are the opportunities for the Reading Consortium to help bridge coordination, district coordination, or be a bridge or between the districts and the Department of Education. So I really, there are opportunities. I'm just urging that we, and we don't want to get confused with the opportunity language, but I'm talking about philosophy and approach.
Right.
So the consortium's role is as a dot connector and a bridge builder.
Right. And do we want to make sure that we talk about sort of the geographical sort of disconnects as well, since we are very much located, in Newcastle County with our work? Do we want to sort of incorporate that into the conversation as well?
I think we should recognize it, but I don't think it's a disconnect.
Okay.
I think we should recognize so that people don't lose sight of the focus of the Reading Consortium.
Right. Well, I think it gives us an opportunity to talk about things that are being done. Like, for example, I know that Representative Chicocha is, and Eugene, they're working on statewide legislative action, and they're making connections across geographical boundaries to do that. So, I mean, I think that, I don't know, it's just food for thought.
It's important to call that out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we have a few questions. Maybe we want to circulate the draft set of questions, make sure we're not doing too many or too complex, that we keep it sort of simple and short set of questions to prime people for Wednesday. Would those questions appear on the agenda? For
Yeah.
That would be, I think it sounds like that would be helpful. I'm reading your comments. I'm just to make sure, and we'll let you talk about them when we get to our public comment too. So I just want to make sure that is visible so that if folks want to be coming to the meeting as the public, that they're prepared to participate as well. Cool. All right, anything else on, sounds like we're gonna keep it to that tight time.
How are
Um,
we going to leave public comment for the end? Are we going to have the public interact throughout with at the end? How do we want to handle that?
Anybody have thoughts on that?
Mm. I think it'd be nice to give a little bit more time to public comment. Like maybe we could expand this to like 6:15. And I don't want to make the meeting longer, but
Well, it might be appropriate. I mean, do we want to have a couple of opportunities? I don't know. It's always such a tough balance between keeping the agenda focused and, and weaving that in.
Mm-hmm.
So then, we always get sort of bogged down in the placement. It's like, do we start with it? But then we want to make sure people have the opportunity to respond to things that are said. And I think it is important to have like I think it's important to have a discrete way for public comment to occur so that there's an expectation that people know
Right.
to.
Maybe it's extended at the end, but also tell people in the chat to put in comments.
Yeah.
And then we can keep an eye on it. If there's something
Yeah.
to be brought to attention, we can.
I found that to be the easiest to manage, just in terms of being able to keep things moving, but not lose, those good thoughts and the feedback. I think I like that. Happy to hear pushback on that, but I feel like it works best to sort of allow that to be woven in through that chat format, and then, make sure we still have that discrete time for comments to happen out loud, so that any points can be reinforced if people want to, but they, maybe they just feel like they've done it at that point. So I think we're fine. I'm fine with extending it, and maybe that also gives us some leeway in our conversation.
you could have people do it in the chat, and then maybe sort of after this recap, we could have like I don't know, build in
Comment on the recap.
yeah, like a section of public comment, so it's not all at the end.
Like 10 minutes there and then 10 minutes at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2 public comment, 1 public comment, 2. I'm fine with experimenting with this stuff. We'll see if that works. Maybe it doesn't work. We never do it again, but it hurts us to try something,
We just have to, I'll set like my timer and it will go off.
Yeah.
So we have to-
Right. So if we have 3 minutes, basically that leaves time for like 3 people to comment.
right.
Point, and then we'll have time for 3 people to comment at the end. So hopefully that'll be adequate. And we also talked about, that would extend it because we're bumping it back. Got it. Okay, I'm fine with that. Any objections?
No, sounds good. Tizzy, FYI, on this date, the coalition has received the health equity grant from the CARES.
Oh, nice.
And we're launching a flu drive, and we have an advisory council of 5 Black female physicians. So we're on TV. So I'm going to have to drop off like about at 5:30 or so.
Okay.
That's our first public facing initiative.
That's amazing.
That's cool.
So, we got money to do a culturally responsive, gender specific messaging campaign.
That's amazing.
I didn't get what we asked for, but we're gonna make it work as best we can.
So that starts at 5. That starts at 6.
It starts at 6, but I have to, get settled, so I'm making sense. So
Yeah,
I'm
no, I
trying to
totally.
split my brain. Yeah, so I'll be the good thing about virtual is that I'll be where I need to be. I'm just letting you know I'm going to need to drop off probably like maybe 5:45 or something.
Okay.
But for a subsequent planning meeting, I really would like to discuss, and we've discussed it. I would like to discuss having the opportunity to have one of these consortium meetings be structured differently, less presentational and much more conversational, where the public is it has to be structured,
Yeah.
but where the public is the agenda. Because
Do you mean like the listening sessions that we were hoping to do, like something like that, like a listening session?
yeah, I guess you could think of it that way. Yes, I guess you could think of it that way, but it would have to have some structure to it, some discussion, questions,
Yeah.
put people in some chat groups because of the limitations of not being in a physical space together.
Yeah.
But I do there last night was evidence. There are topics that people want to talk about that are not it's not a presentational kind of thing. It's like
Yep.
our beliefs, our concerns, and we want to have those out and get people, because it's not singular conversations. We want people to be able to give voice to that over a period of time before you start rolling out specific recommendations. I don't know if it's going to be possible to do it before the recommendations are actually rolled out. It would be preferable.
Yeah. I think that was our hope. I think our hope was that, okay, last night we kind of, had this sort of the baseline, like this is our draft, this is what we plan to be working to see accomplished. And then we wanted to create some space where people can be like, either ask a question or just give their thoughts on sort of that direction. I think the settlement definitely has more of people's attention, but I feel like the conversations we've had in the past couple of weeks have been like, well, can we do one or several? Do we need to split it up by work or whatever? Can we have essentially a special meeting? Because I think it didn't, we didn't want to give over that necessary presentational consortium type of a full body meeting, but we wanted to have, create some space for that more dialogue, more feedback oriented type of a session. I personally think we could do that before our December meeting. But we would have to decide that sooner rather than later, because that would mean doing something in like a month.
Yeah, I think it's very, very important to do. And and I'm not suggesting that yesterday should have been different, but I'm suggesting that have one more meeting where recommendations are presented and people, the consortium members give their input, and then you have public comment.
Right.
I think that we need to have a step in between there. I feel strongly about it.
Okay.
I think it will advance the work in ways that would be good and positive.
Yeah. And I think Tika,
and everything can't be controlled. I mean, people need to be able to say what they want to say.
Yeah. No, I'm completely good with that. And my only worry now is like, we need to get something on the calendar and figure out how it's going to work, because we need to make sure that people know about it, know the substance of what we're speaking to, or whatever they want to say. And then of course we want to make sure that we actually have consortium members there to listen. I think that's pretty important as well.
That's why I think it should be a part of the regularly scheduled consortium meeting, the dates that people have already committed to. Just reserve maybe 40 minutes of the time.
So you think even on our December meeting? That's our next regularly scheduled meeting.
Oh, is it?
We don't have a November
not
meeting.
in November.
Right. So I was thinking more we'd have a special meeting that would be just dedicated to stakeholder engagement, essentially.
Well, what do other people think about the timing of such a format? You're not getting married in November, are you?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't have a date yet.
I saw that look on your face.
Trying to get it done before the end of the year.
Oh, okay. All right. So
maybe.
Okay.
Well, we can just do that, a virtual ceremony.
Yeah, we'll be like, it's a wedding. Surprise. It's actually a
That'd be
listening
fun.
session. That would be very my jam. Yeah, let's do that.
I don't, do you think you could achieve that in November? I'm not November, in December?
Well, I think we have the December 10th meeting. I think it could be doable in November.
Too.
I think it'd be important to. It'd be ideal to have it before the December 10th meeting, so there's time for, yeah.
I mean, for me, December 10th, we should be putting a bow on everything.
Right.
And then
people need to have a lot more time for voice before the bow gets put on it, because we don't want. I mean, it's going to always be disparate views, but we want to hear and consider those viewpoints beyond the consortium members before Bo is put on it. So I'll let you guys think about
Yeah.
the timing of it.
Yeah, I think we need to find an evening that isn't taken up by other things, which is going to get increasingly hard, where we can set 2 hours where we, ideally can have,
Oh, it doesn't need to be 2 hours.
no?
No.
If you think about all the
You
work
like to
groups-
keep it short. I know. But
You
I'm
know why? Because
all the time.
because people, I think, the more time you give people, then we start circling back around over and over again.
True, but I mean, I've spent the last 2 weeks listening to a lot of school board public comment. I enjoy it, but I mean, I think, I don't know, it's not just the substance of what's being said. I think people need, like you said, where they need to speak. But I mean,
And I think also, like, if you're really going to dig into the recommendations of the 3 groups, I think you will need like 2 hours.
Right.
Because if
yeah, I
you-
don't even know if we can I hate to say, I don't know if we can time limit it, but I think it's like when you look at those school board meetings, for example, they expand based on how many members of the public want to come and speak.
Right. I got you. So it might be 2 hours worth of giving voice.
I mean, I think that would be a success in the sense that we had.
Okay, I mean, that's fine. That's fine.
I think also this,
Doesn't follow Zoom norms.
True.
I think this is probably going to create too much work, but it's just an idea. We could also have each work group have a town hall, like a listening session
Right.
meeting instead of one big one.
We did talk about.
That's probably better. You know why?
Okay.
Because after a while, I think people don't comment because it's too much information to take in.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, again, we're doing that without our co-chairs here, so
Right.
I hate to put them on the spot, but it does also kind of divide. It allows people to focus on the topic areas they want to focus on, to the specific sort of thought leaders on that topic within the consortium. I'm okay with that. Just means we have to find more nights.
Right, but it's no decision made. I mean, it's just, I'm just raising it. I mean, we're all pitching in with ideas. And so are the co-chairs going to be on next week's call? Maybe it can be re-raised then.
Oh, Namdi is on.
Oh, I know he's also on a WHA call, so he might not be totally.
Oh,
And
God.
we have been in the funding group talking about this same thing with the referendum reform. We've been talking about possibly, this is a lot too, but it's sometime this is more our work group focus, but in January timeframe, doing a town hall listening session for each county. We were talking about.
Oh yeah,
that.
I love that. I love it.
I like the idea of separating them out too, because I've heard feedback from some community members that the meetings can be very long and daunting. And so lasting, the whole time through that whole portion can be a lot.
I mean,
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say we could do each work group and a full body. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do this. Continue.
But as far as community engagement, too, I think that there should be more smaller opportunities. And I also think that it should be a charge for each of our members to commit to somehow of moving something forward. So whether, as we develop an engagement plan, if it's they host a town hall or they participate in a town hall or they do some coffee chats, or they go to somebody's house. But I think it needs to be a requirement of each member to commit to some piece of the action of moving forward.
Okay. Did you get that down, Haley? I know I saw you writing.
Yeah, because I agree. We've been talking about that with the funding work group about specifically like how to empower the members to like be, I don't know, I feel like it's been very leadership driven and then the IP team helping, but we want to really there's some people that always are active and speak up, but how do you
Right.
have
Social
each?
determinants has done such a great job where it seems like everyone is leading on something for sure. I really like to see that.
Well, I think back to our, some of our first early meetings and Maria bringing up what makes this different. And I remember the meeting that we had at Warner, my response is, what makes it different for me is me. And I don't mean that in like a braggadocious way, but I think that everybody should feel that whatever they're pouring into this movement is the difference. And, you know, I'm from a sports background too, where we say, you know, you leave it all on the court. So I think to that end, each of us have our own networks that we're inside of, and really committing to educating and to the advocacy portion of this.
Yeah. Okay. It can be challenging helping people get there, but I think we have to, I mean, we have very strong members, in my opinion, for that reason. And so we should just be able to figure out how to give people the tools that they feel like they can do that. So.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that, you know, the biggest piece is the communication, and everybody communicates in different styles in different ways. So it's also even knowing the audiences in which you're disseminating the information, and really targeting that.
Right.
I had a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you're
Haley,
good.
you do. So in regards to that, I was looking through some of our archive documents, and I was trying to see if there was any references to some of the opposition in the past when we've had challenges getting some of our recommendations through, as well as also with the House bill. Because so to me, the people that opposed it, those should be ones that we're also targeting. So there's the ones that were already in opposition, but then there's the people that have just never engaged at all. And so I think our plan to address them should be a little bit different.
For sure.
And do you mean specifically for referendum?
Yes.
Okay.
I think, is it 129?
Yep.
Yeah.
129.
And I was
Or it was.
talking about that with Eugene this past week. And I'm putting together like literally exactly what you said, a list of like supporters, people who are opposed to it, and then people who we don't know. Like we're not sure, we haven't reached, or like some of the new legislators coming into like Hall, like we don't know what they think about it. And some of the opposition comes from like the meeting minutes from House Bill 129 when that was in committee. You can see the representatives who were opposed and stuff. So I'm starting that list.
That's great.
Because I think it'd be important to reach out to those folks and to see why they are opposed. Because, you know, I stated I was not in support of it. And I know why I'm not in support of it, and folks that I've had conversations to. So obviously I will push to address those things. But, you know, I know that there's probably others as well.
So I think we kind of tacitly agreed we don't need work group updates, right? Because we kind of got them last night, and we know everyone has a meeting coming up. But because we were on this topic, Tika, I know you had floated the idea of having a subgroup focused on the engagement. Maybe that's something we talk, well, I don't know if we have time to talk about on Wednesday as well, but I mean, do we think we need a subgroup? Is it more, do we need a couple of people committed to supporting those efforts from across the work groups? Tika, is that you? Do you need other people to help you? Do you want to talk a little bit?
I do think that there should be a group dedicated to it, because to me, it's embedded through all the groups, but if there's a group to make sure that that continues to happen.
So
go ahead.
Could that be like a liaison from each work group? Is that maybe, and that's the team? Or I'm just trying to think what's the best way to approach it that's manageable. And
I think that there could be a liaison from each group. I think they're whether they want to identify someone or just have volunteers, but I do think that each of the work groups should be included. But also when I was calling it like a street team, there's just other folks out in the community that support the work that aren't necessarily members that are open to supporting it going forward and getting communications out and assisting with those efforts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good
idea.
So
for instance, like one of the people I had been in conversations with was Cliffon Howe, who I had spoken to you about, who used to work for the Justice Council. He's now the equity officer, I think is the title, but for the Cesar Rodney School District.
Okay.
And, so this is a big part of work he's doing. And then I know he's also, outside of that, very passionate. He also has a podcast that has a huge network of folks. So it's people like that to connect into that I would like to also grow that list, because I think each member in our consortium has their own networks, but really tapping into, like, I look at him as an outlet that probably hasn't been tapped into in the past. So I think people
Right.
really being innovative and creative and thinking about all their different outlets. I also look at it as, like I said, twofold: the education piece and the advocacy. So even if we're out advocating for the bill, I look at it as a piece to provide education on how
Mhm.
people can effectively advocate for education for their children. So just talking about referendums altogether in school boards. So all of that. So to me, I look at it as twofold.
Yeah. No, I think that's all. I'm just thinking in terms of like, how do we manage that? How do we connect that from the consortium to that vision, which is like, it's big. And so I wonder, does that start with, a couple of people committed to this idea from within? And then, because again, it's always capacity. It's like, how does that group then connect with all of these,
Well, maybe start with the thoughts of reaching out to the leaders of each of our work groups and how they plan to engage their community, or how they solve the community engagements for their committee, and then kind of go from there, tied into some of the ideas that I've shared and then others, and then we can kind of organize that as a unit more, and then, like you were saying, have the liaisons, but then it can start rolling.
Right. I think
because
so.
I do think that it shouldn't wait till we're ready to like get the bill out, that I think the education pieces need to start right now.
Yeah, I agree. Let me like immediately. So, I mean, I feel like it's so, I'm just going to restate what I think you just said. So have each of our co-chairs kind of like parse out the engagement piece that they spoke to broadly. What are you actually doing? And then, so we can, and then maybe identify a liaison from within their work group who'd be willing to like dig in.
Right.
And then we can bring those 3 people together with those notes and say, now make sure we're getting this done.
Right.
Does that sound reasonable? I think that sounds very reasonable place to start.
Yeah, it's almost like a comms team.
Yeah, and I think it gives us a focal point. We have a very immediate focal point, which is these listening sessions or whatever we're going to.
But I again, I want to focus a lot on ideas that have been in the past that we discuss involve a lot of the community coming to us. Like, we put information up and we always wait for people to find it or to come to us. My approach is very much like, we come to you wherever
Absolutely.
you are. I look at it like kind of almost like Jehovah Witnesses. Like,
Yeah,
we are in your face, like
we're evangelizing.
giving the word of Delaware education policy.
I love it. No, I get it. Yeah, no, we need to have some evangelists, and we need to have them creating more evangelists, and they have to, what's the best way to spread the message? And no, I think it's brilliant. And I think it's something we've always talked about, but really it's so hard to do it. But I think if we have, and I'm sure that we have those people across our working groups, and maybe there's more than one person who wants to be a liaison because they get excited about the idea. But I think that's how we start. I think we focus on the listening sessions first and foremost, and see if we can evolve that into, like you said, like a comms team, which is made up of our members being active as opposed to us asking our staff.
I mean, I think it should be a requirement.
What should be a requirement for?
Be a member that you.
Well, I get it, but we need, but again,
Some
but it's
kind
like,
of
who's going to help create tools that make it easier for the average, less advocacy oriented member to help evangelize? Because I mean, not everyone's going to want to plan what that messaging looks like. Not everyone's going to.
Right. And whether it's that or maybe in a different capacity for them, I think what I'm just kind of asking is that we challenge each of our members, because there's some members that I think they just have the seat. So I don't know if that's if they were asked and they sat in that seat because they were asked, or if they're very committed to it or not. But regardless of what their reasonings are, I think it would be good to show the commitment that way.
Yeah, and we are on the verge of looking at consortium and working group attendance and commitment and all that kind of stuff. So talking about something like this, I think also helps people consider whether or not it's still a fit or if we're looking for, that kind of thing too. So I still see you as like the thought leader on this particular project, Tika. So as we pull together the notes from the co-chairs and whoever they pick to be their liaisons on this project, I'm kind of seeing you as the lead on it. I don't know. Do you need to?
That's fine. I just
Come
know
up
I
with a
can't
fancy
swim,
title
but-
for you if we would like. You can think about what the queen, because I was telling Tika last in the meeting, I'm like, you look like a queen in your wicker throne every meeting. But I can call you the engagement queen, whatever you want to think about it. But you're going to
That's
be
cute.
kind of in charge of this, if that works for you. And if everyone else is okay with that, you bow down.
You're
So I feel pretty good about that. So you might have to, maybe Tika, can you work with Haley to figure out how do we pull this out of the co-chairs and get that coordinated? All right.
And Tika, ditto everything you said. That's just what I've done as an advocate. That's spent most of my time. I'm not the most analytical type. I can be every now and then, but the Wilmington Center for Education policy, or I've skipped a couple of words. We'd like to work with you.
The West.
The Wilmington
Yes,
Center
used to be West.
for Education, Equity, and Policy.
The seat.
We're about to launch some public-facing conversations, and so the degree to which we can, the topics are very similar between the Reading Consortium, what we're doing, what other
Yeah.
groups may be doing. But you in particular, I'll reach out to you.
Sounds good, Ray.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect.
I know we have with our work groups, Matt has spent an incredible amount of time, the small groups, reaching out to individual members. But a lot of people are really, really busy. A lot of people in our group, they work in social services or they work in schools. And I'm telling you, in some ways they're busier. In a lot of ways, people are busier now than they were before.
The Zooms never end. All right, that's good. I don't think we need to dig in on policy focus areas right now. Any objections to skipping that? Okay. Okay, as we get to time, who do we have who would like to comment? Amy, you put a lot of great stuff in the chat. I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to that, however you would like. If you would like.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm driving, so yes, I think it's great that I can put stuff in the comment now. That's very helpful, so that I don't have to store things up to the end. So thank you. And I know that I was going to these meetings for a while, and then COVID happened, and I had other things going on, and I'm going to try to go to as many as I can now, and kind of catch up. And this was one of my favorite meetings I think I've been to, the planning meeting, so that's good to know. And you guys said a lot of different things, but I guess what I'd like to comment on just now is Miss Jones Avery having that idea of involving the public, at least one meeting. And I know that kind of like spiraled into maybe smaller work group interactions, but bouncing off her idea, I thought that it could be useful because there are members of the community that spend so much time kind of doing this work that you guys are doing. If they could kind of present their thoughts to you and ask you questions, sort of like turn the tables a little bit and have it structured. But in that way, I think people have a lot of knowledge, but they might, like Ms. Jones Avery was saying, question where like the beliefs or like some of the structural pieces are, or like they're missing maybe pieces of the puzzle that you guys might be able to provide for them. and that would help them in their work to help you. So having one of those meetings where the tables are turned a little bit and the consortium members get to answer the public's questions in that way, kind of an informed dialogue. And I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what I thought of. And yes, like, I think that's it as far as my public comment today.
Yeah, I think that's great. I love that. I can picture that. We'll see if that's a vision we can realize, but I think it's a really interesting one and very possible. Great. So I think Amy's our only public today. So unless there's anyone I'm missing out there, I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. 11:31, not too shabby.
Tizzy, can I just ask a clarifying question?
Yes, you can.
For the sort of listening sessions that we talked about,
Mm-hmm.
do you think, like, how should that, I guess maybe should we put it as an agenda item on the next planning meeting and just hope that we have all the co-chairs present to like talk about it? Because I just don't want to wait, like if we want them in November.
No, I don't think we should actually wait a week, if I'm on it. You know, I think we should let them know what was discussed and that if we can identify a series of dates as soon as possible. And I think it's, you know, it's those things that I said Tika would follow up with you on, I think in particular, which is like, what's your engagement strategy look like? Can you identify a liaison to lead?
Mhm.
It's one of the co-chairs, maybe it's another member, but so they can make up that decision. And I think we work with Tika to get dates and stuff identified sooner rather than later. I don't think we need to wait a week to do that. So I think start that conversation in email.
Okay. So I'm just Tika and is able to lead that. I'm just.
Yes, Tika, the ball's in your court.
Sounds good, Haley.
Getting this done before we expect a report out next Friday that all this is. I'm just kidding. I mean, maybe, maybe not. We'll see what happens. But
The
we
world has
definitely,
changed in 1 week.
yes, let's do it. But anyway, it would be great to have sort of a progress report next Friday as opposed to we're starting the conversation. Sound good?
Good.
All right, cool. All right, and we'll come up with your title so we can make sure everybody knows. Yes, comms queen, engagement queen, something like that. All right, everybody, have a great rest. Oh, actually, several of you I'm going to see in what, 30 minutes, an hour? And so I'll see you later. And for the rest of you, have a great weekend. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.